Hello, everybody on Zoom. Hello, everybody here. Lovely to see your faces. We are very excited to have two incredible artists with us today. First, we're going to hear Remy Barnes read a portion of his novel in progress that he's been working diligently on while here in the desert. And then FuChen is going to work on Juan, is going to talk about his work in progress, which you see around us and which is incredible. We're honored to have them both here. They've both been amazing residents here at JTHAR Highlands Artist Residency. And all we hope for is that artists come here, experience what we all love who live here, and then express it through their art. And I think these guys have done an amazing job, and I think you will too. So I am going to turn it over to Remy Barnes, and we're excited to hear him read.
Words thanks to JTHAR, Fred and Jim, the board, everyone who I've met here in the desert. Amazing to me. This whole experience has been so wonderful, and I've enjoyed my time so much out here. And thanks to the people who come from LA and who have come from Florida to come and see this reading. So I'll talk a little bit about the novel, just briefly what it is. I'm going to read right off the copy here. Tentatively titled Plateau of Mirror, part Gothic horror, part neo-noir, part of sort of sci-fi. The novel concerns the silence your cell phones, people. He's actually a plant. We planted this to make sure that the novel concerns a young man searching for his missing twin brother, who may or may not be taking part in a vast social engineering experiment. The labyrinthine home of a billionaire tech mogul. The novel grapples with the ideas of all-pervasive paranoia, grief and loss in late capitalism, technological progress and environmental catastrophe, and the shadowy figures who profit from all of the above. So this, the novel is told in kind of duophonic between the two point of views of the two brothers as they kind of progress through the story. This will be from Jeremy's perspective. The narrator has been investigating his brother's disappearance and has become a bit paranoid, as it were. So he's kind of beginning to see things perhaps that aren't there, perhaps they are. He thinks he's being surveilled, thinks he's being followed. So he has the idea to go and ask his girlfriend's kind of on again, off again girlfriend's father, who's a Soviet emigre, about paranoia about being surveilled. When we kind of get into the scene, the narrator and his girlfriend Petra have just gotten into a bit of a fight. So there's kind of some tension between the two of them. I'll just begin here. Petra's father, Ivanovich Antonovich Volkov, had lived through the zenith of Soviet excellence, and just as well was there for his fall. For reasons he would not elucidate, he often insisted that he was put under surveillance by various governmental agencies upon settling in the United States. His long life lived under the glass domes of those various menageries made him the obvious choice for someone with paranoid expertise on which I could call. A river her parents had dredged the previous summer ran through the yard and into a man-made lake stocked with mountain trout. They followed it alongside the driveway towards the house. The incandescent first floor lights were all aglow, making the house look like a Halloween jack-o'-lantern. Irina Volkov, Petra's mother, greeted me warmly with small, furious kisses, holding me just a bit too long. Though Petra had no doubt told them what had happened, I knew they wouldn't mention my brother. They weren't that kind of people. But it would color our interactions and lurk in the corner of our every conversation. Perhaps better this way. Ivan, her father, was dressed in powder blue pajamas, making him look like a very old boy. He outstretched his large hand and I shook it. The source of the cool and vaguely menacing contempt Ivan had for me, I could not locate. It was as if in a past life I had brought upon him an injury or accrued an amount of debt I did not know of and could therefore not pay off. Yeah. The news was on the television. In their house, the news was always on. The Volkovs had that at least in common with their American-born peers. Evidently, the Neo-Luddite movement, Neo-Luddites or the anti-tech terrorists that kind of lead from the novel, had torched a server farm in Northern California. Thick gray smoke filled the sky there. All that information, all those ones and zeros turned to glimmering embers and waves of orange flame. I admired the NLM's naively poetic belief that the chthonic demigods and deities unleashed by those Silicon Valley arcanists could be vanquished back to the reliquaries by these simple acts of destruction. It's nice to see you, Sasha, Irina said. Because there was no Russian equivalent for Jeremy, this was the tender diminutive they'd chosen for me. The Volkovs treated me like a child, remarking on how much I've grown, but how I needed to eat more. Too skinny, is how her mother said. Irina was not Russian, but Czech, which is what Petra's name, Petra and not Dasha. Irina went to school for engineering at Moscow State University, where she met Ivan when he came to give a guest lecture on smoking pig iron. Much too skinny, Ivan continued. Girl. Petra said something to him in Russian, defending me, hopefully. At first, Ivan's parents did not approve of their coupling. Ivanovich Antonovich Volkov was to marry a Russian girl with aspirations as high as his own. Ivan's father, Nikolay, had been an agricultural commissar, and Ivan was being groomed to have a similar position, albeit in metal fabrication. This was complicated when he married Irina the Czech. Ivan's brother, Alexander, married a Russian girl with high aspirations. There were whispered rumors that Alexander could succeed Gorbachev had the Iron Curtain not rusted and collapsed. As far as I could tell, neither Ivan nor Irina had any outward objections to Petra's coupling. Though in Ivan's eyes, I was no more than an itinerant schoolmarm saddled with frankly embarrassing amounts of student loan debt and credit card debt. Thankfully, Irina contended that I was technically an instructor at a prestigious university. Each of these characterizations were broadly half true. It was the same for Petra. On the one hand, she was an unemployed visual artist, and on the other, she just received a grant to attend a residency in Barcelona. One of her prints was hanging in the Brooklyn Museum. Schrodinger's 30-somethings. We both were and were not failing in our chosen occupations. To correct my perceived weight, we ate some frozen chicken fingers that Irina heated up, which I did greedily into ranch dressing mixed with hot sauce, a decidedly American concoction favored by Ivan since their emigration. They had a large eating kitchen with original hardwood floors and cabinetry that neither Ivan nor Irina could be bothered to learn how to maintain, and a massive stainless steel refrigerator the size of a small sedan, which was connected to the internet. So whenever you ran out of a certain item, said item arrived on your doorstep as if by miracle. According to Ivan, though, it didn't work. We keep running out of vodka, he said, a thin half smile concealed under his slate gray mustache. I didn't like the refrigerator. I didn't like being anywhere close to it. I felt like it was watching me. The Armentrout saw your painting in the museum, Petya, her father said. It's not a painting, Papa, she said. It's a woodcut block print. Okay, then they saw your woodcut block print, her father said, stumbling down the words as on an unsteady staircase. Did they like it? She asked, anticipating the obvious answer imminently arriving. Duh, I think they liked it, Irina said, but then Irina gestured with her hands, indicating either an inability to conjure the right phrase or simply an unwillingness to continue this thought. They said it was very graphic, her father continued. The print, titled September Girls, featured two women engaged in cunnilingus, 69 style, with some spiraling flower-type things with reptiles and such around the border. I mean, it was more than that, but that's what it was. Reduced to adolescence, Petra looked to me and briefly widened her eyes in a conspiratorial gesture, an unspoken language decipherable only to she and I. The intimacy of this shared lexicon caused my face to break into a wide grin. I was glad to have its presence still in my life. After we ate, Petra retired to her room. Even though she'd been living with her parents full-time for over a year, she was staying in the guest suite because her childhood bedroom had long ago been requisitioned for the establishment of a gym. At the vanity where she pinned photos cut from magazines of the perpetually young heartthrobs for which her teenage body hopelessly pined, there was now a treadmill. And one of those stationary bikes where sweaty people on a screen yell at you to pedal faster now sat in front of the window where she'd spent the summer with a broken leg watching fireflies rise and settle on the lawn. Petra, still upset at my earlier transgressions, gave me a perfunctory kiss goodnight, only because we were standing in front of her parents, and then departed with her mother. Despite being in pajamas and slippers, Ivan exasperatingly agreed to speak with me in his office. The walls of Ivan's office were decorated with Soviet-era paraphernalia. His name written in Cyrillic on various plaques and accolades, There was a picture of Ivan as a much younger man, shaking hands with Brezhnev in front of a factory set upon some bleak landscape in the Russian hinterlands. There was a black and white photo of him and his brother Alexander, arm over arm. They looked so similar with matching sets of bushy brown hair, faces slanted with crooked smiles. Ivan rounded the large military-style desk while I sat on the opposite side. Atop the desk was a chessboard where a game was in progress. "Where are you playing?" I asked. "My brother," he said with a dismissive wave. "I've played him so many times, I know exactly which moves he will make." "He must be winning then," I said. "I can never best him," Ivan said. "He's a much better player than me. But you and I will play a different game." He produced a bottle of vodka and 2 crystal drinking glasses from the cabinet. "It is a drinking game. When I pour, we drink. Everybody wins," I said. "True communism." He snorted disapprovingly and poured 2 glasses. "Nazdrovya," I said, and tipped back my glass. The vodka was acerbic and strong, tasting more akin to rubbing alcohol. My stomach briefly roiled. "Cheers," he said through his thick accent, and tipped back his. Despite the rough chop of the vodka, I didn't even so much as wince. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and said, "You know, Russians don't say Nazdrovya when we drink." "Then what do you say?" "You wouldn't be able to pronounce it," he said. "You'd only sound like a donkey with a head cold." This amused him greatly. He slapped the table and laughed with all of his lungs. A laugh that would sound like an affectation if coming from anybody else. "You know, I lived in the Ural Mountains for a long time," he continued, "in a place called Lenitogorsk, when I was just, as you say, getting my feet under me. In the north, the men would only drink in silence. You know why?" "Why?" I asked as he once again refilled their glasses. "Because it was so fucking cold when you opened your mouth, your tongue would freeze." He showed me his large tongue, pale pink like day-old salmon. "But you did not come here to talk about tongues." "No," I said. "Ivan, I want to ask you something." "You may call me Vanya," he said. "Okay," I said, "Vanya." But before I could continue, he cut me off with a wave of his hand and said, "I know what you want to ask. I have been knowing that you were going to be asking this, and I thought a long time about my answer. At first, I was going to say no, but not for the reasons you think. In any marriage, one must be a rock and the other an egg. You understand? In my marriage, Irina is the rock and I am the egg, despite what you may think. The rock must be careful with the egg, and the egg in turn must be careful with the rock. They know this about the other. 2 eggs do not work, because eggs will not be careful with other eggs. They are bound to break each other. 2 rocks will just hammer against the other until they weather away. At first, I thought you were both eggs. Eggheads, you see? Sensitive, thin shell. But then I thought, no, you are both rocks. Hard-headed, stubborn. But then I thought more. I realized you each take turns being the egg and being the rock. So as long as one of you knows which is the egg and which is the rock, you will be fine. You will live a long and happy life. So with that, you have my blessing." Maybe I should have just said yes. Instead, I gave him a long and confused look as he tipped back another glass of vodka. "You want to marry Petya, yes?" he said. "Oh," I said, "well, no." "No," he said, his face souring. "I mean, not no, but not now. Not yet, anyway. Not to say that's not something that I wouldn't like to talk to you about in the very near future, just not right at this moment." A tense, nervous energy surged in the space between the 2 of us, confused and complicated by the already sizable amount of liquor we each consumed. He was clearly less enthused with continuing our conversation, given this unfortunate revelation, and all at once I recalled the Makarov pistol he kept in his desk right-hand drawer, the same pistol he drunkenly insisted I watch him load the first time we met. He waited, keen eyes watching me like a fabled bird from an ancient saga. All at once I told him everything I knew or thought I knew about my brother, his disappearance, of the shadowy figures haunting my periphery, and the feeling that there was always someone just behind me who was going to tap me on the shoulder and ask me into a room from which I would be prohibited from leaving. I told him all this, put it all out in front of us, piled it together in a shambolic heap. Ivan considered me evenly as if surveying a broken machine that he was now tasked with fixing. He drank his drink, so I drank mine, and then he poured 2 more. "When I was a young man," he said, "and Irina a young woman, and Petya just a girl, we had a government who would yes watch us, and they would yes punish, what is the word, dissidents. But it was only the government who we had to watch out for. Then they, and you know this they of who I speak, cut off the great bear's head. They cut out his heart, and they cut off his claws and his feet. Do you know this? You know this. But you cannot kill something so easily. So the great bear had no head. It had no ideology, nothing to drive it. And it had no heart, so it had nothing to sing to its people. It was just claws, that's all. You understand what I'm trying to tell you, Sasha? I'm saying at one time, all we had to fear was our government. And then after the fall of the Great Bear, we had so much more to fear. The oligarchs and the gangsters who work for the oligarchs, and the government put in place by, well, you know who helped put the government in place. And if you don't, you should. Everyone was trying to grab what they could before there was nothing left to grab. When the American businessmen and the British businessmen and the exiled Russian businessmen first came, it was as if what they did to little girls and boys, Sasha, it would make your skin boil. It would make you tear your eyes out. If the party was bad, and Sasha, I do not think the party was bad. I think the party was sick and needed healing. I, Sasha, am still a proud communist, but the party had its problems. I know this. Someone could have fixed it. You could have fixed it, Sasha. But if the party was bad, then everything that came after was so much worse. The bottom fell out of the world, Sasha. It was every person for himself, every family. Knowing what happened to all those girls and those little boys, Sasha, I couldn't let it happen to Paytip. I had to do it, Sasha. You understand, Sasha, don't you? You can forgive me, Sasha, can't you? He reached across the table and took my face in his large hands, soft and doughy with age, and pulled me toward him. He embraced me so tightly that I could smell the citrus rind of his deodorant, and under it, the musky tang of his body odor. His heart beat quick in his throat. He kissed the top of my head. He said something in a language I couldn't understand. It sounded like a prayer. No, it sounded like a confession. That feeling, what was it like? It was like when you're in the grocery store and some stranger begins following you. Whichever aisle you turn, there they are, almost colliding into your cart with theirs. Then once you're wheeling out of the store, they stop and say a name, but it's not your name. They search your puzzled face, your darkening features, and your confusion becomes theirs. A living thing, you can both see. The confusion then becomes clarity. Oh, they laugh and idly touch your elbow. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were somebody else. Then as quickly as this wave swelled, it receded. He released me and sat back in his chair. His eyes were rimmed with red, but his brave face remained as serene as a stone, as if whatever happened hadn't happened at all. He poured 2 more glasses of vodka and we drank. I stumbled around the second-story landing, searching in vain for the way back to Petra's room. I feared entering the wrong door, so I settled on going downstairs and getting some air. Bonnie and I had shared several more drinks in total silence before he declared that he was going to the restroom and never returned. The episode with Vanya left me feeling strange and melancholy, so I ate a fingernail. Fingernails are what he calls small slices of psilocybin mushrooms that he's been taking for depression. So I ate a fingernail to alleviate my sorrows and sat in a rocking chair on the wraparound porch. The night was quiet and cool, and I could still feel his arms around me. In the dark of the woods, a figure moved through the trees. I stood up from the chair, walked a few paces into the yard, and then broke into a sprint. I chased him, my shadow, like I did when we were boys. Knuckles blue-black with abrasion and broken bloody noses. Did I ever tell you about the dream I had when we were both dogs? I called out for you, voice scouring something loose in my chest. I came to the bank of the river, a quivering metallic darkness speckled with oscillating nailheads of starlight, suspended in a water sky. It cut the woods in two. Somewhere far off, on the other bank, a light. But I couldn't make that jump. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jen here?
Yeah, hold on.
No, it's okay, I'll just.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
Edward FuChen Juan is an incredible printmaker from Vancouver, Canada. He's thoroughly enjoyed his time here at JTHAR with me and each other. We've had such a great time, and I'm proud to call him my friend and incredible artist. He's going to tell us all about his printmaking and a little bit about some history of Taiwan as well and how he makes these wonderful prints. Ed?
I'm gonna try to keep it very short. I'll put my watch right in front of me.
Trying to tell me I want
You're fine. My name is Ed. I came here from Vancouver, Canada, but I was born in Taiwan. My family and I immigrated to Canada when I was 9 years old. I'm a printmaker by trade as well as a paper maker. So this is the work you see here that I've been working on since I arrived about 7 weeks ago. And I'm gonna just kind of have an outline here. So I just want to briefly talk about what this whole project is about, this installation. It's something I've been working on for the past 2-3 years. And it's kind of cool to have the space to be able to kind of experiment with installation, because that was my original plan. I needed a space to create this type of piece. So just quick history. For thousands of years, Taiwan is a little island, volcanic island in the tropics, and people have moved there, settled there, from the Dutch to the Portuguese, to the Chinese, to the Japanese, and the Korean. So it's a mixture of different people lived there for thousands of years. But about 150 years ago, the Japanese annexed Taiwan due to Meiji Restoration. And then about the end, so at the end of World War II, the US and the Allies signed a treaty with the Japanese saying that we're gonna just temporarily give this island to the Chinese government because they were our ally and fought the Japanese. However, about a year later, the Taiwanese people started protesting. This is in 1947. Started protesting and started asking for democracy. And at the time, the government of China, it was called the Republic of China, and they lost the civil war to the communists. So the People's Republic of China took over China, and then the Republic of China, hope this kind of makes sense so far.
Yeah.
The Nationalist Party, the Republicans, they seek refuge in Taiwan. So about 8 million of them moved to Taiwan. And at the time, Taiwan had about 20 million people. Sorry, 2 million moved to Taiwan and about 20 million people in Taiwan. So when they came, they took authority, and basically on February 28th, in 1947, it was a boiling point. So people were protesting in Taipei and every city, and then the government decided that's enough. We're gonna just murder everybody. So they went out and shot everybody on the streets. Not only that, afterwards, they decided to go after the families. They go after all the artists, poets, writers, journalists, scholars, doctors. So they went around the island and decided to massacre everybody. So then that was the start of the martial law. Does everybody know what a martial? Everyone knows what a martial law is, right? So basically, Taiwan became a police state, and then lasted from 1947 to 1992. I was born in 1982, so I was born into that era. And at the time, we called it the White Terror. It's named after the French Revolution, the Reign of Terror. However, the White Terror ended in 1992, mostly due to the US and the UN threatened the government that if you're not going to do this, we're not going to help you to protect you from China. So the first election happened in 1996, and when the first election happened, the people who opposed the government became in power, and they were able to form one of the first Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Asia, and that was done in 2007. It is still ongoing, and that's basically apologize, and they have acknowledged, and they have what they've done to the people, and they've also been still ongoing, recusing people who were political prisoners. And the second thing is, it's still ongoing, removal of statues, if that sounds familiar, dictatorship symbols. And number 3 is education and telling the next generation what happened, so that you will never forget. And that including renovating prison camps and detention camps into museums.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is not the first time it's happened in the world. Obviously, it's happened in Germany, South Africa, Korea, many places, Cambodia. And it's happening now in Canada, actually. It's the history of the Canadian treatment of the First Nations. So basically, I'm doing this project because in 2016, I found out I have 2 relatives who were executed. And nobody told me anything. I found out through the New York Times by reading an article, because at the time, 2016, the museum was built to commemorate the February 28th, which was yesterday, actually. So, and at the New York Times had these photos of the museums. I saw the photos, and there were names in each photo. One of the names was my last name, and I knew that my last name, my family name, is quite rare. It only comes from 2 villages in the entire country. So I asked my parents who that was, and my mom said that is your great-granduncle, your grandfather's uncle, and let's just not talk about it anymore. So I had to do my own research. I reached out to the museums. I reached out to other relatives. Didn't want to disturb my parents. To this day, my parents still don't talk about it. And this is since 2016. So I kind of started making this art research about 3-4 years ago because I really felt like it was part of my personal history. So all the houses are from villages where I grew up and surrounding villages in southern Taiwan. And they're all historical homes. Oh, I select the old houses for a reason. Some of them are temples, but they're all houses of people who were taken away. Yeah, so I still haven't put in my great uncle's house, because I just don't know if I want to yet. And thank you, yeah. And the houses you can visit now, some of them are museums, some of them are given back to the family. So I was able to do some research, reach out to some of the families. I even specifically, I actually, in the past 2 years, I've been interviewing people who were able to find peace in Canada and the US. So during my residency, I've been going back to Los Angeles to visit human rights activists who are in the 80s, now 70s now. So they were active since the 50s to the 90s. Even now today, some of them. So that's part of my project. So that's what I'm still working on. So this is ongoing, but I just want to also acknowledge that the reason that I am here, and I never thought as a child that growing up in Canada, in Taiwan, that I never thought Taiwan would be a thriving democracy we see today. It's the first country that had that passed gay marriage in Asia, you know, and the second one just happened in Thailand. It's also the first and only first country that has a truth and reconciliation in Asia. Second one is South Korea. So I just want to acknowledge that people who fought for democracy, some of them, most of them have passed on. I wasn't able to interview. Yeah. And that includes my great aunt who I never got to meet. So unfortunately, she passed away 4 years ago before I started the project. So I'm hoping to get to know her and the activism she's done through books and stories. And I met people here who knows her personally. Yeah. So anyways, I just want to say before I continue, there's not much else to say, but I can talk about the technique. So basically, my original idea was to create a house. Obviously, I only created one wall, but I did finish the gate. And then behind those guys, that's the wall that connects to the gate. That's not done either. So my original idea is I just want to see if I'm able to do this. Obviously, I can. So I would like to recreate a house and a yard with the gates so people can kind of feel the installation. Because at the end of the day, my thought was this is a project not about the past, but more about the future. And these are just memories of everyone, a collective memory. So these houses still exist, but the people no longer live there. And it's a collective memory of like what peace was or what peace could be. And that's kind of the idea. And I also, the material also really matters a lot to me. So every images are etched. So there's a bunch of etching over there on the copper plate. So I did most of those here, and you can go touch any of the plates. Don't worry about that. Yeah. So you can touch a plate, and there's a little magnifying glass for you to go through it. So, and I printed every image with Gombi paper, which is the strongest paper. And I found this family who still makes paper for the past 400 years in Taiwan. So I was able to print on them here. And then the actual structure of the paper, except this one, but all of those are yucca fibers that I collected on this property. Yeah, and you can kind of see the yucca on the table as well, and how it went from quite rough material to really pulp material you can use. And then this one is created out of banana palm in Taiwan. And then because the yucca paper is not really great to work with, but so I was able to blend it with the banana palm. So they all have banana palm and yucca and the gates and the wall, but this one is just the, yeah. So you can kind of smell it too. I don't know. I don't think it smells like anything. So yeah, so that's just the idea. So I'm still working on it. I'm thinking the lighting has to do a lot with it because it makes it feel like the village is floating almost rather than stationary. And I actually would love it if I can exhibit it in a place that has windows. So it gives it a breath to all the paper. So even like as you walk by the work, you can see it moving. And I really love that because it's meant to feel like it's alive. I wanted to make people feel that memories are alive all the time. And that's just kind of the idea. It's a conceptual idea, but I thought like a house or a hearth and can give you that feeling. And yeah. So my proposal and my intention for this project was obviously about human rights activism. And I just want to also acknowledge that people have really opened up to me and let me talk about their experience and working with the elders who have survived and continue to fight for democracy. And I also want to end this just to say, you know, art is an important tool for advocacy and protest and identity and celebration. And I think it's important, especially now, you know, especially in this country, that art is one of the language and it's the strongest language to express, you know, protest and also express advocacy and to express how democracy is so important and how, and also look outside beyond our own community and see how other community has suffered, but able to come out of the darkness and able to battle this. And it's always going to be a continued challenge, but I think that's where we can find encouragement from others and not just within, but outside as well. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, like, about both of the artists that are here and their proposals, how they came, they worked really hard throughout the 7 weeks, and they didn't bother us too much. That's always important. So we sort of left them to their own devices. You know, Edward was like always in the studio producing. We learned so much from him. I think his thematic, and also same with Remy, the thematic of the work that is being done is really talking about stuff that's going on right now in the world and in our country specifically. So I think it's really powerful that it just happened at this specific time of how you're expressing yourself about your feelings of your experience as well. So I applaud you for that.
So we're gonna do a quick question and answer. So.
Oh, yeah, I just want to say one other thing
Oh, sure.
you touched on, but I just personally find it fascinating about printmaking, and that the tradition, and particularly having to do with Taiwanese, is that it's not only about the texture and the feel of the paper and the look of the paper, but it is really a sense of smell. You were saying the elders that you visited when you took work in,
Oh, yeah.
everybody's smelling it. So it's all those senses, and I just found that fascinating, but
Yeah,
as a
they did
printmaker
that.
myself, we never thought about smelling the paper or
Yeah.
making the paper. So it was just an interesting experience that you shared about that.
Yeah, I remember one of the elders, when I brought, not this whole piece, it wasn't finished, but I brought like a couple pieces to show him. It got me really emotional because he was touching it and then he said, you know, I just want to say, I hope you continue because it looks Taiwanese, it smells Taiwanese, and it touches Taiwanese. And I've never felt so represented in my life. And I was really quite taken aback. Coming for somebody who fought for my rights, the right to democracy. So should we sit here so everyone can ask us
Yeah.
questions? I don't even like the attention. Anything for you. Okay, grandma. So yeah, any questions for Remy and I? We're gonna talk about this, maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes.
I just had a technical question with, you said you have really strong paper that you use for the print. What is that made out of? And then also what kind of glue do you use or how do you go about it?
Okay, yeah, so the paper is called Gampi, Gampi. And everybody knows Hokusai, right? Like the famous way with the mountain, that's Gampi paper. So the paper has been around forever. And that's what that's what I was able to use. And it's from a tree. Yeah, so they cultivate a tree for thousands of years to make this paper. And then the technique I didn't glue it on, actually. I did bake it with glue, but it's made of rice glue. But I actually didn't. So what I did is when I made the paper on a frame, and then I put all the images down on a cloth, but reverse, right? And then I put the wet paper, not the paper pulp on top. And then the paper pulp, as it dries, paper dries, the fiber and the fiber of the yucca and the fiber of the gampi kind of woven back together. So they're not glued on, they're actually woven together. Yeah, so think of paper, it's like a weave, just like a cloth. Yeah. So.
What is the source for the image? Did you photograph all these houses?
So I photographed most of them, but then I wasn't able to visit all of them. So I was able to find a blogger, and he just loved old houses, and he's still photographing. So I asked him if I could use them. Yeah. So he's
I printed them out.
Yeah, you printed some off. Yeah.
So it was a collaboration.
Yeah.
I gotta give it credit for that.
Yeah, yeah, because they kind of look photographic, but yeah, but not all the houses were photographed in a way I could use them, so I had to kind of like play around, like, what would it look like at this angle? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A question for Remy, forgive me if this is, it's hard to know because we only got a small glimpse of what she wrote, but I'm curious as to why you chose the title that you chose.
Well, it's a long story. I mean, it's a play on the record, Plateau Mirror, which I listened to while writing. But I was also using oblique strategies, which is, in Fripp's card game where when you get stuck, it's not really a game, it's a series of cards. You get stuck and you flip one and it'll say something oblique like open the window or avoid catastrophe. And you'll be like, okay, well, that'll be the next route that I take. And that was a part of the exploratory process, like going through that. But then I ended up, sort of the other half of the novel concerns this kind of tech billionaire who creates, his original money came from the creation of a role-playing game called Plateau Mirror. And so it all kind of ended up being part of the DNA of the novel. At the end of the day. But I dropped the X. Plateau the X, so I dropped.
For now.
Yeah.
We're talking about how being out here has made you, it's done its job in terms of what a residency is supposed to do in terms of making you focus and be prolific and stuff. Is that just has that more been about just silencing the noise, or is there something about being out here that has enjoyed things for you?
Oh, yeah, we're very different. We talk about that.
We do, we talk about it a lot.
You go first.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, it's so much, like, I need to have, I should have printed a picture of it, but I put all of the novel on the walls of my small room, just so I could reference them quickly, like if I needed to like see something, or if I had an idea, or I wanted to strike on the dialogue, like I could do it. So like that, having actual physical space was important. And then also when you're, out here and you've got taskmasters like Jim and Fred coming by every other day, making sure you're.
That word count.
So that was great. And, I live in Los Angeles, which is a big city, so you lose a lot of that distraction. You're kind of just out here on your own. Really, it was, some, desert friends and Jim and Fred and Ed, is the only real social contact with.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's like, so most days, the only voice out here is my own, arguing with myself.
But you love that.
I do love that. What about you?
Yeah, I had to get used to it too. I live in Vancouver, but I do live in the city, and I have a little garden next to my house, so I do enjoy that. But coming here, you have acres of wilderness. We both saw the same bobcat. Yeah, that visit us frequently. And it's been pretty incredible, but at the same time, it's also really lonely sometimes for me specifically. I'm such a social butterfly. And so like I actually brought a couple of books to they're called prison journals of people who were in prison before they executed. They write letters to their family. Not a great idea to read when you're by yourself in the desert. So I stopped. But I brought like 3 of them to read, and I thought it was I don't know what I was thinking, but anyways, I wanted to interpret it and I thought, what a peaceful place to do this. I couldn't read them. After the first day, I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. So, so there's that aspect of like, kind of prioritize what works for you in this space. This is a rare opportunity to have like 7 weeks of just like working, and you don't have to think about anything else.
Well, like 6.5 weeks of work.
6.5 weeks working, yeah. But like aside from like, you gotta make your meal, but then, you know, it's like almost in college again.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Well, I still haven't left, so.
Oh, sorry.
So technically, college.
He's getting his PhD.
Dinner and school one, yeah, that's a person.
You're gonna be a doctor.
That's right.
Remy, does Plateau have a ending? And if so, is it to any extent personally predictive of the shifting changes in the dynamics of power structures and how they're evolving?
Yeah, I think it does. I came out here and, you evolved. It does, yeah. I mean, I came out here and the idea was I stripped about 30,000 words. I put about 60,000 new words in it, so it ballooned from 249 pages to 307. And it came with an ending, a new ending, somewhat new. And then, yeah, I think the whole novel, I mean, the excerpt that I read deals with the fall of communism in the Soviet Union, but there's a character who flees, ironically, from Taiwan at a point. So all of it is sort of about the historical nature of power struggles and the kind of, you know, the historical dialectic of time and how that flows throughout history to what we have, you know, what we're dealing with now. And of course, the billionaire scion that is kind of takes place in the novel is thinly veiled for various others. But even that, like to understand like how we get to that, there's so much history behind it. And I was joking with a friend of mine that I need to put about 100 pages of 15th century German secret societies into it just to make it really work. But I don't know. It might end up being downloadable content.
So no 7th draft.
I mean, we'll see. And they could balloon another 300 pages.
You mentioned that the tech billionaire,
We didn't see
who we didn't
in this
see,
section.
gained his fame from creating a game. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that.
I mean, it's hard, it feels like I'm talking about a ghost or like a friend, friend that we've never met, but, yeah, the idea of the game that he creates, it's like a sort of like Gen X nihilistic game called Plateau Mirror.
And how it like interacts with the novel that you.
Yeah, and it just takes up a lot of the, like I said, it's duophonic, so it's the two brothers in his chapters, he's sort of playing this game and sort of realizing that there are like discrete above board power struggles going on each night that they kind of play this game in this like kind of gothic mansion that he ends up at. And like they're all kind of like a proving ground, like these nightly role playing games become a proving ground for the struggles and the power struggles that are going on within like the corporation that he runs. So it all, I don't know, it all becomes like very meta. But you'll have to read more about it on this stuff.
Wondering how being alongside each other on this journey affected the work. How would it, you know?
You changed a lot because you met me. Did it? You're not bad.
I don't know. Did you feel that way? I think we both are really diligent and disciplined. We kind of give each other so much space. Yeah, like we try to meet once a week over dinner. I have him over, I make dinner, he brings Juan, and we talk about something. And desserts, sorry, and desserts. So we do talk a lot about everything, and it's nice to like just like have discussion without getting heated, and it seems like that happens a lot these days, you know. But we talk about politics from everything from politics to geopolitics and world politics. So,
It's a fact, it's possible about our friends.
oh, yeah. So it's, so, you know, at the end of the day, it's good. It's also like, you know, I really respect Remy as a writer. Like I read some of his short stories before I met him. So I just want to get a sense of like who is going to be my neighbor here for the next 7 weeks. And you probably didn't look me up, but whatever. Oh, you did? Okay.
My part. Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, I mean, as a writer, you're always a little predatory. Like anytime you hear something and you say, you're a thief, you steal it and put it into the novel. So I can't say that nothing was influenced by my time. You have a little details. But just to have just to be able to be invested, and you know, because we can talk about our art and not bore each other. Like
Yeah,
we would
that's
if we
it.
were talking to somebody else.
We did not.
What are you talking about? Stop talking about your day.
Yeah, I mean, I felt comfortable to talk about everything, so. Yeah, and I'm glad that Remy was like open to that, to conversation, so, yeah.
I think both of you got a real camaraderie together, you know, and you're such different personalities, but at the same time, you kind of blended together and it's really interesting, and that is not always happening at a residency. So to see that, you know, executed and that you guys enjoyed each other's company and shared stuff was really, you know.
Yeah, I'd say that's a bonus,
Yeah,
yeah.
it really was.
And we meet once weekly to play a role-playing game, sorry.
Oh, is that you?
It's been gassing you up, I feel like it's been great to meet you, because
Yeah.
somebody good things about you every single week.
Yeah, I gotta go meet him for dinner, and he goes, what did you play D&D? And he makes fun of me about
I did not,
And Ed did make quite a few dinners for not only for a lot of the board members and.
Well, Remy took part too.
And well, that's true, Remy also helped, but you know, I know you've been inviting people over. You like to entertain.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
But who doesn't like to?
I'm just saying, people know who you are, you know, and they're good meals, yeah.
Yeah, any other questions? If not.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
We're happy to.
Yeah, so.